Greetings from London and the RCA's In Session event. We've got hundreds of guests from 30 countries, so this really is a global event. It's interactive and you can use the Q&A button to upload your questions anytime that you want. And it's being recorded and we'll share a link after the talk. And please use your chat button if you have technical difficulties with the webinar. I'm Philip Dodd and I'm the founder of a 21-year-old creative business company. I'm co-founder of an executive education program at the RCA. I'm a long-time BBC presenter. I'm delighted to have with me two marvellous creative business leaders. In Madrid, as it happens, although she is based in Mexico, in Madrid is Gina Diez Barroso, a serial entrepreneur whose company Diac has worked with designers and architects for the last 35 years. Forbes named her the most influential woman in Mexico in 2024, and in 2023, she was named Entrepreneur of the Year by Ernst & Young, EY. She also founded a creative university, but we'll come to that later. In London, much more locally, is Jack Godfrey-Wood, co-founder of Heirloom, a collection of celebrated designers who work across consumer, medical, and digital design in London, Tokyo, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. And Jack's own work is in the collections of the British Museum and the V&A Museum, which is in London too. We're going to talk about what's next for design, global versus national markets. It's a subject, I should be honest and say it's close to my own professional heart, because I've been working between China and Europe for the last 21 years. I wonder if the new geopolitics are going to make my life different or even harder. Well, we'll see. This In Session is tied to a 3-day masterclass taking place at the RCA in September called Building a Globally Successful Creative Business. And it's aimed at CEOs and startup founders, and it's taught by globally successful creative entrepreneurs. I only wish Gina was here so she could be part of it. Jack will be part of it. I want to begin now, and as I said, do think of asking questions. I want to begin with someone who isn't known for his interest in design. It's Larry Fink, who's the CEO of BlackRock, which is the largest investment company in the world. In the Financial Times, he wrote a piece where he said that globalization 1.0 is finished. It's come to a deserved end. It was too insensitive to regional and national needs, and one might add, maybe cultural needs too. Consumers are turning to local brands, alert to local and national histories and idioms. Some will come to praise this new situation, others to denounce it. We're here, Gina and Jack and myself, to try to understand it. I should say that the big global fashion brands are doing much less well than they were in China as Chinese consumers move to their own brands, and China's as big a market as they can get. So Gina, I wonder if I could begin with you just to ask you personally and very briefly. You've been doing this for 35 years. Can you feel the shift to the local and the national, or do you think the world is actually as global as ever?
Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to this talk, Philip. I think it is a little bit of both things that are happening. You know, one thing that it's really true is that people are turning more into their identity, you know, more than what is produced and if it's local or global or international. You know, they want identity, they want more pure things, they want more, like, you know, even in food, they want more, you know, farm to table things. So that's one thing. But I think, you know, going global, it's another story. because I think that you can also go global with local things in where you open markets. You can open markets of design architecture wherever you want to open markets in, using their local brands, using their local things. So I think that it's a combination of two. I don't think that is never going to end, the going global. I think more than any time, the borders, in my opinion, should be erased.
And the truth is, recently, a couple of years ago at the Metropolitan Museum of New York, there was a show about textiles, which showed that textiles in the 16th century were also global. So you're right, Gina. What about you, Jack? If Gina's company has been going for 35 years and going strong, you're just a baby. You're a 3-year-old
Thank you.
company. So I'm interested, what do you think about this? You're working globally, but do you think there's an interest, as Gina suggests now, in more local identities?
I think it's a really good question. I think we're kind of global by default because we started in San Francisco. We have partners all over the world and teams spread everywhere, and our clients are all global. But I think what we're learning is actually the little things we learn from different cultures are actually immensely valuable to these global businesses because they've homogenized things and become more similar to each other. That we're able to offer these little fresh perspectives that can take people somewhere new and more interesting. And that's where we've been trying to push ourselves and push our clients as well.
And do you think your clients are demanding more local, more specificity, more regional, more local, more national? I like Gina's use of food. You're right, farm
Yeah.
to table. It's partly a sustainable issue too.
I think some need it because in, say, healthcare, there's tremendous differences in how successful a piece of healthcare can be designed based on local empathy and knowledge. Others need it, so that's what we're offering. So it's a case of showing people how to design something that, while it's global in scale, can be local in the way it adapts to cultures or allows cultures to celebrate what's unique and wonderful about themselves, without having to just buy the same phone and laptop as everyone else in the world.
And Gina, in Mexico, I should say Latin America in London is never easy to see. You're in Madrid at the moment where it's much easier to see Latin America. Do you think Mexico itself is beginning to turn and think about its own traditions and histories in design and architecture, which are, of course, spectacular in many ways?
I do think that Mexico is evolving in design very strongly. Um, I think that it's at this point where Mexico is doing a huge change. I have a very dear friend, a very very dear designer, and he was saying that one of the different things between Europe and Mexico is that when you go, for example, to Italy, and you see amazing fountains and monuments and things. I mean, they're incredibly interesting for architects and designers, but they were done in, three centuries ago. And when you go to Mexico, and that's what is bringing a lot of young people like Jack and his generation, is that you are in Mexico City, and the design that is taking place, you are sitting next to the person that is doing the design that is taking place at this point in life. So that is a different thing, that the designers are there now doing this amazing transformation of what design can do in Mexico City for the world.
And do you think, Gina, there would have been a time when Mexican designers would have drifted north to the USA? Do you think they're more staying home now?
Well, staying home, it's a physical metaphor, because
Yeah,
nobody stays home. Here we are. I mean, one person is in London. You are also, I don't know where you are physically, but I mean, I am in Madrid. I could have been in Mexico. You could have been in India. You could have been in China. And we are physically wherever we are in the world, but even if we stay in a specific place, our designs and our architecture and the things that we do are all over the place. So as Jack very well said, you get inspired by different places in where you live, but you can manufacture and sell and be in different places in the world.
do you think, Jack, and then I'll ask the same to Gina, that there is a grounds for saying that actually globalization 1.0 did tend to homogenize, but it wasn't really homogenization. It really was the US and Western Europe. That's what was spread across the world. You know, when I first went to China in 1998, the only words that could be used, I didn't speak any Chinese then, to taxi drivers was Manchester United. It was a brand, and you just say Manchester United, and the cab driver would smile. You know, Louis Vuitton, everybody moved into China, which meant the Chinese were forgetting. I don't want to get sentimental about traditions, but were forgetting their own traditions. Jack?
Yeah, I think in our world of kind of physical design, there's been an enormous homogenization just in terms of technology and design that has been really boring. And I think we're bored as a company with that world. Like I have a laptop here that is the apex of manufactured product, but if it broke now, I would go and get another one tomorrow morning and just carry on my life as normal. I respect the product. I don't love the product.
Sure.
And so I think it's important to recognize why those companies did that, which is that they need scale. So they need things that everyone accepts and likes. But from our perspective, we're a little bit bored. I think culture's a little bit bored, and we're looking for more human, joyful alternatives to that, that everyone would like, but on their own terms. Yeah. And I think that's kind of where we're trying to push things along.
And Gina, you're working at a scale that's unimaginable to Jack, but do you think there's some truth in what he says more generally?
I agree 100% with Jack. You know, I do think that now more than ever, you know, we like the human touch. We like the design. I mean, more than ever. I mean, when I tell you more than ever, I make it in huge letters, you know, because I think that when people talk about that designers in the world are going to to disappear because AI is coming and everything is happening, and I think it's the other way around. You know, AI and technology can make things faster, can make things maybe easier, but everybody's looking for humans. You know, we have to understand that we don't need to be human beings. We need to be more human. And that is what the people are looking for. And that is what humanity is needing in design, in architecture, in innovation, and also in mental health. I mean, that's another story for another comment, for another hour. But I mean, I do think, like Jack says, we are looking for the same thing.
Okay. I want to ask a question that's come in from one of our viewers. And actually, it's somebody, Enrique Saavedra, who's Director General in Mexico, who asks 5 questions, but I'm going to lift one of them out, rather 4 questions. He asks how design changes from country to country, from industry to industry, and also from a local brand to a global brand. And that sense of the mobility and fluidity of design is, I think, very important. Jack, do you agree with that? I mean, you have offices in various places in the world. Tokyo is as different from London as I can imagine.
It is, but I guess we share a commonality of mindset. That means that while the inspirations might be a bit different, the goals and hopes and dreams are the same. And so that's how we can pick and choose bits of inspiration from where we're based, but still retain a kind of common core that means our work has a common sensibility and quality level.
But can I ask you a question, which is meant very, very nicely, which is, does that mean the people you choose in Tokyo have to understand London, and the people in London have to understand San Francisco? So actually, in the end, they all have to be global.
I think so. I mean, we never set out to be global. We just went and found the best designers we could and people we wanted to work with, and they happened to move. And so we had no plan to have offices anywhere in particular. We didn't even plan to have a physical office. But as really good people who we were used to working with moved country, it felt sensible to make sure we carried on working together and then use that scale and breadth as a superpower. So we now are able to work with a Japanese client much closer than we could, or when we do healthcare work in America, we can bring in all of the amazing things we learn from Japan and how health is done differently there.
And you began, like everything begins, Gina, as a local brand, but you've become a global brand, or you did years and years and years ago. What was the most difficult thing about making that journey from local to global?
I think there's a huge challenge of understanding the different cultures.
Yeah.
I don't think that the design is different. When you ask Jack about
Yeah.
the design I don't think the design is different. Design is design, and it has no difference between one country or the other. The culture is what is, in my opinion, challenging. Because every brand that goes to another country and tries to implement the culture of its origin in the country that they go, they fail. Because obviously the most important thing is understanding that these people have a culture, education, culture, upbringing, the way they are. They're never going to change. If I want to open something in India, in China, in United Arabs, they are who they are. And Mexico is what Mexico is. So if I want to open anything anywhere in those countries, I have to understand deeply the culture of the people that I'm dealing with. And I can design whatever I want. The design is not the important thing in this matter. What matters is the culture of the people that I'm trying to communicate with.
Okay,
so I think that is a humongous challenge.
I was going to say, okay, you've told us what the difficulty is, and I don't want to get onto education yet. We'll come to that later. But how do you then personally, or how does DARC, which is a diminution of design and architecture, is how did you make your selection? Because you want a good designer, but you also want them to be culturally literate.
And I think, to me, one of the most important qualifications that a person, forget about if they're designers, architects, or just critical thinkers or innovators, they have to have is the life skills, which I call life skills. Somebody, by mistake, called them soft skills. I don't think they're soft at all. I think they're the essential skills you need in order to succeed in life. So if you really are an expert in soft skills / life skills, you can go anywhere in the world. Because you can work with interdisciplinary people. It's as challenging, the same interdisciplinary than working intergenerationally, which is different nationalities, different religions, different races, different sexual preferences, different specialties, So that is the beauty of being creative,
Sure.
And that is a problem, in my opinion, and we'll talk about this when we talk about education. That is a problem of being too much the left side of the brain. But that will come later.
No, we'll come to that later. Then I want to ask you one more question, then I'll move to Jack. When you cross the border, metaphorically and literally, from Mexico to the United States, that's both a very easy journey and culturally a very complex journey. What were the issues? Because living there, Mexico is a big country, an important country, but it lives in the shadow of the US, for good and for bad. So when you made that journey first, which is a long time ago, do you remember the challenges of it?
Yes, the challenges are huge because, first of all, we have a reputation
Sure.
that is very badly labeled. That first, we are not extremely good designers. Second, we don't accomplish our goals. Things that are completely badly labeled on us. So you have to cross the border and literally prove yourself much more than any other company that were American made, let's say, or US made, let's say. So that's a very strong challenge. But on the other hand, the good thing here is that when we were competing against United States designers, and I'm talking about architectural designers, no product designers. When we were competing against the United States designers, they were very much cookie cutters,
Sure.
super cookie cutters. And we were completely different. We were much more creative. We use materials that they never even dare using it. We mix materials differently. We did completely different things. So that was basically what made us successful. But the challenge was huge because, the minute you say, I'm Mexican, honestly, many people thought, we were a disaster.
Yeah.
So that's something that is quite complicated.
Because that's, I think, in a sense, what Larry Fink was talking about, which is also the inequalities. In China, and I'll come on to that because one of the questions is about China. In China, China just means cheap goods. It doesn't,
Exactly.
and it shouldn't. But, in the global imagination of too many people, it just means poor goods. Jack, what's your response to this?
I love the idea of just hiring different types of people and being different on purpose is a massive superpower to us, because you can hire very good designers around the world and do fairly good products. But if you want differentiation, you're going to have to hire slightly different types of people and different types of designers. So we make an effort to hire people from all over the place, but also to make sure they're not necessarily skilled in obvious areas. So we don't prioritize actual technical skill as much as does someone have an interesting vision. We can find the right technical skills wherever. It's does someone want something exciting is the kind of key question we're asking ourselves. And I think I really love what Gina was saying there about making the thing that makes you different the important thing, rather than trying to homogenize or erase it. It feels super valuable.
Okay, so there are lots of questions coming in, and out of that, it's an anonymous attendee, but anyway, it's a good question. With more and more companies using AI to cut costs for production, how can we protect the diversity we see with different cultures? Which seems to me an interesting question. Gina first?
I do think AI is a great tool if we see it as a tool. We have to see it just as a efficiency tool, and to protect ourselves is, if we can do, if we can do the creativity that AI does not have, we're always going to be protected, always going to be protected. And, the feeling that a person has towards another person that is designing for this person, AI will never have. So I think that is basically, that's something that will never be taken away from us, is that if I'm going to design something for you, I know how you're feeling. That's why the soft skills / life skills are so important. I feel you. I read you. I know how you're feeling. I know what you like. I know what you're communicating to me, what you're looking for. Never AI is going to do something like that,
And just briefly, Gina, of course, as you say what you say eloquently, reminds me that traditionally feeling, empathy have been female, not male characteristics.
That is why diversity is not only a good thing to have. Diversity is a very profitable thing to have, and a very successful result at the end of whatever you're going to do. Even if it's design, it's architecture, it's a boardroom, it's a KPI, or it's the GDP of a country. Diversity is results on money, on profits, and that is why women are absolutely different than men. We need men, they need women, and not only men and women, not only gender, all diversity. And Jack put it perfectly, all diversity. You might need person that you would never think they're going to be on a boardroom, and they need to be on the boardroom because what they think, nobody else is going to think. So that's very important. To me, for example, to be a leader, number one requirement is empathy. And if you would ask me that maybe 20 years ago, empathy was not even on the list.
It's true. Jack?
We have a thing we say a lot here, which is good designers just being a good human. And I completely agree with everything Gina's saying. It's not about doing anything different, quicker, faster. It's just listening and being empathetic and doing the nice human thing. And I really love what Gina's saying. But I also, from what we do when we do physical design, is how can you feel that the human was there in a world of AI? It's very cold when a AI does it, but when a human does it, when you can see and feel the hand of the maker, it's really, really lovely, and you feel really connected with. I'm just looking. I have a coffee mug that a friend of ours made, where she puts her a depression in it, which fits perfectly when you hold it. And I know that she did every single one of the thousands of mugs. I have a connection with that object because of that little moment that I don't think an AI will replace. And it actually, the use of AI just puts a premium on that type of glorious human interaction.
I want to pick up a question from Tomasish. I hope he or she will forgive my pronunciation. I think it's Polish, who makes a comment about Chinese designs, but I think it's more general, saying that designers in China, like Guo Pei, who's a famous fashion designer, they're really trying to learn from Chinese traditions. And there's a Han Fu movement in China where young people dress in traditional Chinese gear, but they're now trying to export this. So, Gina, you did it between Mexico and America. What would you advise any country living in the shadow of a difficult reputation? What does it need to do, a company, to get outside or get beyond the cliches, the stereotypes that the big country has?
Well, I think one of the things is do things right. Do things right. Obviously, do things well, and not carry that that guilt or that stereotyping of that you're a failure because of where you were born, or because of people think that China, or the case of Mexico, that China is poor quality, massive production, and it's things that you're going to be trashing the first time you wear it. China has amazing design, amazing clothing lines that I have a friend that has all her line made in China, and she's super high-end pricing, and she exports all over the world. So I do think that we have to prove ourselves doing things well. That's basically the only advice that I could give, because that proves everything. Everybody's wrong. If you
Jack, I know you have a view on Apple produces almost all of its phones in China, and the stereotype is that that's because the labor's cheaper, which is partly true. But it's not only that case, is it?
No, all of our clients produce their products in China over the last year for fairly obvious reasons. A number of them have tried to produce work outside of China with very little success. And I think all of the best mass manufacturing minds are in China now, and they are making all of the best work. And so the idea that it's for cheap goods isn't true for us, because it's where everyone's making everything.
I've just been rapped over my knuckles, quite rightly, by Tomasish, who a called guest was Polish, and he or she says, I'm from Croatia, researching Chinese fashion, Silk Rose fashion,
amazing,
one indigenous fashion. In other words, a good case of from Central Eastern Europe to China. And since I've just done a big exhibition of a Polish artist in China, China understands Eastern Europe and Eastern Europe understands China, because they've both lived in the shadow of different kinds of communism for a long time. This is the moment I want us to talk about education, which I've held Gina back from talking. And I'm not going to start with her because she has so much to say, but I'm going to start with you, Jack. If you put together, what both of you have said is that life skills, what are crudely called soft skills, or what sometimes are dismissively called feminine skills, how important they are. How do you teach those, Jack? How do you teach them, or can you not teach them?
I think you can teach them by not teaching some of the things we teach at the moment. So in Western design, education is incredibly rigor-based and technical, and it's based on the lightest, the fastest, the cheapest of everything. And actually the empathetic human answer rarely is those things, would be one way. The other way is to encourage travel. So I know a lot of, say, RCA students come from everywhere in the world, but I'd worked in 5 different countries by the time I was 25, and just having that perspective was more valuable than what you learn in a course. And so the ability to travel and see how other things can be done differently and better is really inspiring for a designer, but also really important to recognize that the better way is always out there somewhere, and you just need to go and find it.
Now, I said I could just let you speak for an hour about Centro, Gina, and deservedly so. Centro is a Mexican, is it fair to say, private university, to use the language of Europe, a private university that's centered on creative disciplines. How's the curriculum been different from that of what we might call North American universities?
Well, it is very different from North America and from Europe.
And from Europe.
But you know what happened to me that, when I was the age of my friend Jack, I decided that I wanted to leave a legacy in education. And the more I saw, in the beginning, I thought I was going to leave my time and my money at the time that I had made in architecture and real estate developing and design. But the more I saw, the less I wanted, because I definitely saw that creative careers, the creative and design careers were, in my opinion, being taught wrong. So, I said the only thing I can do is start a new university, which the difference is that, the first frustration that I found was that if any student wanted to study any creative career, the parents would say, you're going to starve to death. Of course, you're going to be a designer. That's fine. But I mean, honestly, what are you going to live from? Or, I want to study film. Yeah, but I mean, you're going to starve to death. But honestly, what are you going to study? So that's so devaluating for a young person. So I said, we have to unify the left and the right side of the brain. No university does that, even now. If you go to the best university and you're a business person, analytic, mathematician, whatever, you go to the left side of the brain, you might go to MIT, you might go to Harvard, you might go to Yale, fine, you're extremely successful in those universities, London Business School, London School of Economics. And if you need to make a change and COVID hits and you need to make a 180-degree change in your company, you have no clue on how to make it. Talking about hiring people from different generations, talking about life skills, about creative thinking, nothing. And likewise, if you're at an absolute right side of the brain, you have no clue on making money, financial statements, pitching, asking for a loan, understanding your business. So that's what Centro does different.
It's very interesting, because when I was a proper academic as opposed to a visiting one, I always used to remind my students that Shakespeare was a millionaire by the time he died, because he was a property developer in Stratford in England, and there's no necessary evil in making money as a creative. Alfred Hitchcock, a great English filmmaker, spent all his life in Hollywood making films that are great art, but also make great money. Do you agree with what Gina's saying, Jack, about that sense of having to bring together different ways of thinking to have the kind of design community that really can be fruitful and generate both economic and what we might call cultural value?
Yeah, I think we often struggle with clients that think that beauty and intelligence can't exist at the same time. And how, if something that we've done is pretty, then how do we know it works? But then if something we've done is functional and it's really boring, then it's not working either. And I went to a very technical college and then an art school to do 2 degrees, because it was the only way where I felt like I could get everything that was going to be useful, because there's boring technical things that are vital, but without knowing how and when and where to use them, they're kind of mediocre on their own. And so I think it sounds fantastic, and it is really vital, because it's things like AI make being status quo quite easy now. So it's who has the vision to go beyond that and to do something unexpected and human. That's a really important value for everyone in design from now on.
Sorry, go on briefly, Gina.
No, one of the things that, for example, we do that I think is vital as well, we have 3,000 students, 600 professors. None of the professors, they're from 26 nationalities. None of the professors are full-time professors. They are all successful people in their fields that they give us X amount of hours per week. So if I'm going to be learning design, I'd rather be learning design from Jack, that is going to give me maybe 4 hours a week, maybe 2 hours a week, maybe 6 hours, whatever he's able to give me, than from a full-time professor, a 10-year professor that has never designed anything commercially, or teaching me entrepreneurship, somebody that has never paid a payroll in his life. So that is the thing. We don't have one single 10-year professor, no full-time professors. I mean, it is different, but it's that's what makes us. And another important thing, when I started the university, I knew nothing about making a university or building an education project. And I talked to the 10 presidents of the 10 universities that I thought were the best in the world. And I asked the presidents one question: what would you do different if you had the time or you were able to add or subtract something from your curricula? And they said, get rid of bureaucracy. Bureaucracy kills innovation. So we have zero bureaucracy, zero.
I think I might come and learn at your university, Gina. I want to, because there are plenty of questions, this is interesting. Together, another anonymous. A lot of non-Western companies often want to replicate work of the West, or designers, or they hire designers from the West to come across as international. Question is, what is your perspective on this? How might we help clients to find talent in their own countries and harness those networks? Jack?
That is a tough one.
It is. It's a tough question. Let me just say, to give you a moment. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, broadly, I don't agree that you should just import Westernized design as if that will be successful, because it feels inauthentic when done. And you could also argue, is Western design that great anyway? So is it worth it? I think when we look for people, we're generally looking for people who are going to bring a different cultural bias to what we want to do. And so my assumption would be you would do the same back, but you would have to have a creative direction that was proudly, confidently unique to that culture, and then incorporate the rigor and the skills that maybe you felt you were missing, rather than incorporate the mindset of another country or another nation.
Gina?
Yeah, I think it is. I agree. It's complicated. I think you have to look for the right mix, depending on what you have already in your company. Not say the West or the East, or I don't think the region is so important, but it's more important the talents and what they bring to the table, and how different they think, because you can have 5 designers from the West or from the East or from the whatever, and 5 can think absolutely differently, and that makes a diverse group. It doesn't matter where they're coming from. I don't think that the nationality or the zone or the area is as important as their capabilities or their strengths.
Yeah.
An interesting question, which I'm going to pose differently to both of you. Is design and brand development truly supported and valued, first of all, in Britain? Jack, do you think design and brand development is truly supported in Britain by both the government and the private sector?
I want to say no, but there are examples where it is. I think design is much more important than people give it credit for. And both as, like Gina says, as a commercial exercise, but also as a creative and cultural one. And I think in Britain especially, that second bit is often ignored behind engineering and function and the more technical parts of the art. So while London especially has some really amazing design and brand agencies, there aren't very many companies letting them loose to be as creative as they're able to be. So I do think there's something missing where it would be nice if everyone could let go a little bit. I think we'd get much better results.
Gina, same question to you. Is design and brand development truly supported and valued in Mexico by both the government and the private sector?
No. For example, in the government, no, definitely not as supported. No, appreciated every time more by the private sector, and they should be more appreciated, because the difference when you have good branding and good design is incredibly exponential. Exponentially different with your brand. Unfortunately, now more than ever, there's this wave of people that think that they can just buy a logo in, like, www.logo.com or whatever, or AI.logo, or I don't know, whatever you want, which is ridiculous, because the branding is not a logo. The branding is way bigger than the logo. And the branding, if you have a good branding, I mean, a company that I admire enormously, Chermayeff, Geismar, and Haviv in New York. I mean, you see their books, and they're logos that, I mean, you see them and you have lived with those images over and over again in your life. I mean, it's like a brand that, I mean, and every time they take a word out and they just leave their dots, or the Nike. I mean, Nike, or now National Geographic, that you have just the square, or, US Open, or, all of this amazing mobile. Mobile has been there for it also, they did it. But I mean, these logos that have been forever there, branding, much more than a logo. So I think branding it should be so much more appreciated by the private sector. The government, I mean, you're struggling with a hopeless case, I think, because it all depends who's in the government. In the case of Mexico, it's every 6 years, and then they leave. In the case of Britain, also you don't know what the prime minister is going to think in the next period. So you have to work with the private sector, because it is really what moves the economy. In the case of Mexico, it's all the GDP is moved by the private sector. So we should really talk to the private sector, show cases of the private sector, of the difference between having a good brand and an average brand and a bad brand.
And purely from a design perspective, I think there's a devaluation of design versus brand, when a design is the brand you use every single day of the year or of your life. And so in some of our healthcare work, a medical company with a great piece of branding will struggle if the device someone has to use 5 times a day for their whole life doesn't work well. And I think that's often missing in business strategy, is how are we going to affect people every single day? How are we going to add quality of life through what we're doing?
I want to ask you both a question, because the three of us sat here live metropolitan lives. Gina, if she's not in Mexico City, she's in Madrid. And if she's not in Madrid, she's in Miami or wherever. Jack, you're in many places. If I'm not here, I'm in Berlin, or I'm in Beijing. To me, the really interesting question that's raised by this return to the local and the national is how we get design and architecture to matter beyond metropolises into provincial places. Because Jack, you can draw on a global group of designers who love London, but they're not likely to love a small town in the north of England. And the same with you, Gina. There'll be lots of designers who want to stay in Mexico City, which I think is a completely compelling place, but are not going to live, somewhere outside. So how do we move design into provincial and regional and local? And even what the Chinese are trying to do, move it into the countryside. Jack, first, these are impossible questions. So
These are
impossible And
I can only speak from our experiences. 3 or 4 of our designers do live outside London, so we are mostly remote for them. So there is not a huge difference from a location perspective. It's again, like Gina said earlier, if the mindset aligns, people can be wherever they want. And so I think there is a hunger for people to live somewhere they're happy and then still do good work. I don't know if I missed the point of the question. Maybe.
no, but that's true. But they're just metropolitans slumming in the countryside. Forgive me
Oh,
for
I
putting
don't know.
it. No, I know that's a polemical way of putting it.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm aware of that. I know it's not true, but that's different from routing design, in the countryside. Gina?
We are the opposite.
Okay.
For the opposite than what your question. For example, our designers want to live in Oaxaca. They want to live in Chiapas. They want to live where the indigenous are.
Okay.
Because they are eager to see what they're doing. They're eager to see their textiles, eager to see their designs, their stones, the thing with Mexico is that the rural area in design, it's so rich.
Yeah.
That when we've had designers from Japan that they come to Mexico and they want to live 6 months in Oaxaca. It's like, and they are immersed in this, in how they paint from paints that are, like made from stones and earth and little animals, like they make like the Aztecs or the Mayans. They love to live in the Mayan country. I cannot stop them. Believe me, this is the opposite. I mean, this is like I have to put them literally tied to a chair in Mexico City.
Sure. Well, and of course, Jack, Gina's just called the British bluff because the rural, richness of Mexico is
it's not like
incommensurable. It's incommensurable with living, in the countryside, or even what I want to do, live by the seaside in England. There isn't that rich kind of cultural mulch from which designers can draw, or maybe there is. Maybe I'm wrong.
Sorry, go ahead, Gina.
I was just going to tell you that Mexico has 45 indigenous tribes.
Yeah. No. It's a really good point. It's a really interesting point. Jack?
I think that some of our most interesting collaborators live outside in the country. So we work with a company called Rush Matters who make rush woven textiles, fabrics, and coverings from locally harvested rushes. So there is, again, we're looking for objects with the hand of the maker or a sign of humanity in them. And when we find them, wherever they are, that craft is so lovely and valuable.
Yeah, no, I have a feeling this will become more important.
Yeah.
Certainly in China, there's a huge attempt in that very Chinese government way. Do you know what I mean? There are 53 minorities in China. Do you know what I mean? To draw on those traditions. And my guess is that will be part of the future. I want, as we come towards the end, to ask you a question which is really about health and design. If there is one global subject that we all share, I don't think I've ever been in a gym in my life. Okay. But my younger son, who's 32 now, seems to me all of his life in a gym. The new generation feels they need to remain healthy. They can't remain healthy. They can't rely on the state. And design is going to become more and more important. Now, I know one of your areas, Jack, is kind of, I don't know if I want to call it medical devices, but, medical devices. And I've seen some of them, and they're almost flagrantly beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, I think for us, what we've learned is that in healthcare, there is often a focus only on the medical outcome. So does someone survive or not? But that misses the core benefit that all humans are looking for is, am I living a better quality of life now that I'm doing this than I was before? And so a lot of our work is trying to bring that human touch where it's most vital back in. And then I also think we see a big shift from health as a band-aid to health as a product. So a lot of companies we work with are now moving further forwards to try and help people live healthier so they don't need attention in healthcare at the end. As well as working with patients with chronic illnesses, where anything we can do to make their life more dignified and easier has enormous benefits to them and increases the pleasure of living.
Gina?
Well, I think it's I didn't know that Jack did that, but it's amazing. You know that I was for several years on the board of the Global Wellness Institute.
Sure, exactly.
And it is amazing because that industry is a from $4.1 trillion industry, it went to 7. So it is a great industry to invest. I mean, it is incredible what people are looking more than ever after COVID. People are looking for being healthier, being better, and feeling good. In all senses. From designing hotels, designing areas, healthy communities to live in, from devices, from different anything that has to do with living in a better life. So I think that is an industry that the people that are listening to this talk, that is an amazing place where it is needed. I mean, design is needed. So I do think that's an incredible thing that you touch, Philip, because that's definitely, I see it. I mean, as an industry that just grows and grows and grows, I mean.
Yeah, and as populations get older and have more need of devices and a whole set of things, design is going to have to become more attentive to that kind of thing. Now, we've got a number of questions. I'm going to read them all out. You've only got chance probably to answer one, but I'd like to give everybody a chance. Do you think handcrafted designs such as painting, murals and similar art forms will gain renewed value in the coming years? That's question one. Do you think young designers nowadays are more influenced by non-traditional sources like social media, Instagram, TikTok? If so, is it good or bad? And what is the one initiative higher education can do in terms of curriculum design to prepare graduates and upskill them? So there are those 3 questions. The first about what we might call handcrafted issues. The second, the opposite question, do you think everybody's now more influenced by social media? And the third, what is the one thing you do when you're a dictator, as it were, that would bring goodness to the world of education? You first, Jack.
Wow. So the first one was, does handcraft
you only have to answer one.
Oh, okay. I guess I'll take the Instagram one. I think the big thing we're trying to do is have our designers not look at that for inspiration, because that's where every status quo exists there. Obviously, if you create your feed really carefully, you can have something really nice, but that's very hard to do because that's not what the algorithm wants you to do. So for us, the real inspiration is in the problem and in the empathy, and it's looking there and having obscure enough sources to make sure you've got good ideas to pour in there.
Gina?
I think that, the handcraft, because education is very difficult to say one thing but I mean, I think the handcraft hasn't gone away. I think the handcraft is there and it will still be there. Obviously, the designs and everything have changed, and there's a lot of technology mixed with handcraft also. You can do amazing designs with handcraft and technology mixed together, and you get amazing results, not only in the case of doing murals, but also in the case of doing fashion and textile. I mean, we're doing a lot of fashion and textile with technology mixed in. So I do think that there's a lot of things that can be mixed with the handcraft and technology and the new things that are coming up in the market. So I don't think that is going to end at all. I think it's going to keep on being higher and higher demand.
I think that's a lovely moment in which I'm afraid we do have to end. Could I thank everybody initially for listening and taking part, especially the people who've asked questions. I hope I've been able to at least respond or ask our guests to respond to one from at least all of you. Can I thank hugely Gina and Jack for sharing your thoughts and insight. I expected this to be very good. I didn't tell you that, but it was even better than I thought. So I'm really grateful to both of you. We will share a link to the recording of the session with everyone who registered for the event. And if you want to find out more about building a globally successful creative business, which I'm involved in and Jack's involved in, and other creative entrepreneurs involved in, do just go on to the Royal College of Art website. It takes place from the 17th to 19th of September 2025. Thank you everybody for your time. Thank you particularly Jack and Gina. Enjoy the rest of the day, and Gina will only be able to eat in 5 hours because Madrid does not eat until 11 o'clock at night. Thank you from Philip Dodd, and thank you all of you very much indeed. It's been a great pleasure. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Bye.